What's going on, everybody, and welcome to J Sports Seattle. In this video, I'm going to be talking about head coaching candidates, just a few of them, just the ones that I wouldn't mind seeing as the next head coach for the Seahawks. I'm also going to be talking about the John Schneider press conference today, just go over a couple of things that he said. So if you like the video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share for more Seahawks and Seattle sports content. Without further ado, let's get on with the video. Alright, so this is recent. This came out not long ago as of making this video. But we have requested an interview with Lions OC Ben Johnson for our head coaching job. Per source. This is per Pellicero, so he's a pretty reliable source. And it's not just him, it's all their sources too. I think Schefter said so as well. But this is just one of many interviews that we've requested over the past few days with potential head coaching candidates. As you know, yesterday we requested an interview with Frank Smith from the Dolphins, their OC, Mike Kafka from the Giants, their OC, Dan Quinn. We requested an interview for Dan Quinn. And let's see, is there any? There might be some I'm missing. Evero from the Panthers. We requested an interview with him. But we've probably requested at least 8. I could be wrong on that. I think at least this, but with these new ones, it could be 9 or 10 now. But we requested at least 7 plus. We requested an interview with at least 7 plus potential candidates. So, yes. So I'm going to talk about Ben Johnson, but first I'm going to go over all of our candidates, the ones that I would want us to be head coach. So there's Ben Johnson, then Bobby Slowick from the Texans. This is from the. Okay, these are really just the two that I would really not mind. We have not requested an interview. We have not formally requested an interview with Mike McDonald yet from the Ravens, but I would assume that we would. Probably request one soon enough, whether he wins the Super Bowl or if they exit in the playoffs. Either way, we're going to request an interview with him. But and I forgot Raheem Morris. We requested an interview with Raheem Morris from the Rams to be our head coach. But Ben Johnson and Bobby Slowick are the two people that I'm leaning towards becoming our head coach, especially Ben Johnson. I'm leaning more towards Ben Johnson just because he has more experience than Bobby Slowick. So, Ben Johnson, as you know, he is the offensive coordinator for the Lions, and ever since he's been with the Lions, he has been their head OC since the 2022 season, so last year, and has led a top 10 offense as their OC in Detroit. And I would want him to be our next head coach. And for multiple reasons. One, he's an offensive head coach, and I do want us to get an offensive head coach. I think it's time. We haven't had an offensive head coach since Mike Holmgren, so I think we should go back to being plus we've had a defensive head coach for the past 14 years. And Jim Mora in 2009 was a defensive head coach. So the last time we had an offensive head coach was Holmgren back in 2008. And it's been 16 years since we've had an offensive head coach. So I think it's time that we go back down that route, especially since today it's an offensive league. And I'm sure John Schneider knows that, which is why we are requesting more and more interviews with people that have an offensive side or offensive background. So Tom Pellicero said that we have requested an interview with the Lions with Ben Johnson, and we probably will not interview him until probably next week or the week after, depending on how the Lions do. They play the Bucks, and they might honestly, I think they might win that and go to the NFC Championship game. But the thing with the head coaching position in Seattle is very attractive. It's one of the hottest head coaching spots open in the league because of how attractive it is. It's ran by John Schneider, who is a successful and a very good GM. They will be joining a successful organization an organization that's been successful for the past 15 years. And we have ballers on our team, and we have a younger roster. We have ballers on the offensive side. Like, we have JSN, we got DK, we got Lockett, K9, Charbonnet, Bobo, Fant, the tight ends. We have a lot of Gino still, was doing good. We have a lot of ballers on the offensive side that would definitely attract an offensive head coach. So, in like Ben Johnson or Bobby Slowick. But like I said, Bobby Slowick, he's only been an offensive coordinator for 1 year, and he's only had a few years of being exposed to offensive sides of coaching. Versus Ben Johnson's been doing it for a while. He's been doing it since his like early 20s. So he like mid to early 20s. So he's kind of well versed in the offense, and you can see that with him on the Lions. Now, moving on to John Schneider's press conference. It was not long ago. It was at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is 12 p.m. my time, Mountain Standard Time, because I'm in Arizona. But he has confirmed that the changes in his role will include having final say in personnel decisions regardless of which coach the team hires, and that the coaching staff will now fall under his umbrella. So, and I will read this too, John Schneider confirms at his press conference he now has final say over the Seahawks personnel matters. Pete Carroll had it since he arrived in Seattle, though Carroll noted at his farewell presser he often deferred to Schneider. It was a smooth operation for the most part. So even though Pete Carroll had the final say in who they hired for their head coaches because he was the vice president of football operations, he still went to Schneider and asked for his opinion because Schneider's a good GM. Schneider's opinion weighs heavily for our team, and he knows that his insight would help him. But the thing with that is, since Pete Carroll is vice president of football operations and he won us a Super Bowl, John Schneider kind of couldn't really butt his head into it because of how powerful Pete Carroll was how much power Pete Carroll had over the roster and who he brought in versus draft and coaching. So I would assume that with this, not with him being he's now completely under control of what happens with this team and the roster and who the coach is, I would think he would go for a younger head coach. I think he would go for Ben Johnson because Ben Johnson is 36 and he would be one of the youngest head coaches in the league. And the thing with a first time, and he would be a first time head coach too. And the thing with a first time head coach is they don't really know how to pick their coordinators. So they would definitely leave it up to the general manager, John Schneider in this case, to do it for him, which would work perfectly because John Schneider has a say in who he has for his coordinators, and Ben Johnson will get a promotion. So I think that John Schneider will go after Ben Johnson when it's all said and done, and I hope he does because I think him and our offensive pieces would go crazy. Like just think we had Shane Waldron who fell off a cliff last year, and our offense was still had moments. It was still average. So just imagine if we had him, who's constantly led top 10, top 5 offenses, Ben Johnson. But I did tell, and even Garofalo said this, John Schneider getting emotional while talking about Pete Carroll. I know John Schneider didn't want Pete Carroll gone, but I think he knew it had to happen because in the words of Geoffrey Chaucer, all good things must come to an end. So I think this is perfect. It's a good chance for us to really take things into perspective on what we want in a head coach. And even, John Schneider when he was asked whether he prefers next head coach to have a certain background, he was very vague on it. He said staff development and procurement. I think that it's extremely important, regardless if it is an offensive guy, defensive guy, or special teams guy, to be our head coach. But the thing with that is, in today's league, it's much easier to develop staff and have staff development and procurement on an offensive side because it is an offensive league. And like I said, if I know that, John Schneider knows that. So he says, okay, I will read his full quote and I'll read the question. So, do you lean toward offensive guy, defensive guy, or special teams? And John Schneider said, you definitely have to look at the history. You have to look at the different experiences those individuals have had. We've done a ton of study on that already. So yeah, they've done a ton of study. And so with that, and you can read between the lines that he knows that in today's league, offense prevails. Offense wins championships. The Chiefs proved that last year in a shootout in the Super Bowl against the Eagles. We've been looking at it for years. Special teams coaches, when you look at Coach John Harbaugh, obviously he stands out with all the success they've had in Baltimore. When you're the special teams coach, you have a really good feel for, and you're in the midst of who's going to sorry, I'm like spacing. When you're the special teams coach, you have a really good feel for, and you're in the midst of who's going to inactive, active all throughout the week, and the planning on both sides of the ball with the offensive staff and the defensive staff and what both groups are looking for. There's a balance too. If you hire a defensive coach and he hires a really good offensive coordinator, and then the offensive coordinator is going to leave the next year, then what kind of consistency are you going to have with the quarterback? If you go back and look at the San Francisco 49ers when we hired Coach McCarthy in Green Bay, they had just drafted Alex Smith. So they had like 3 different offensive coordinators, so that got things a little bit wonky for his career early in the mix. You have to look at those things. And if you hire a great offensive coordinator or a guy that's going to be a good play caller, where is the strength of the defensive coordinator and kind of consistency and philosophy strategy is that guy going to have? And how long is he going to be able to stick around? Staff development and procurement, I think that's extremely important regardless if it's an offensive guy, defensive guy, or special teams guy. So, with that being said, if we do hire Ben Johnson or any other offensive coordinator to be our head coach, we know that John Schneider has final say in who the defensive coordinator will be and who the offensive coordinator will be, which is why I think that he will go for a younger head coach such as Ben Johnson, because like I said, Ben Johnson's young and it would be his first head coaching gig, so he wouldn't know how to pick coordinators and pick his coaching staff. John Schneider would, because he's been a GM for a decade and a half, so he definitely has been, and he's won a Super Bowl, so he knows what it takes to win a championship more than a rookie head coach, which is why, like I said, I'll keep saying it, we will get Ben Johnson, or at least go for a younger head coach. It's very important that we do get our coordinator straight, because Pete Carroll has not really done a good job the past few years in hiring coordinators. Obviously, like Schottenheimer was good because our offense was really good under him, Brian Schottenheimer. But like Kenny Norton and then Clint Hurt hasn't really done much. It hasn't really looked good with Pete Carroll when Pete Carroll picked our coordinators, except for when he first started his head coaching gig here in Seattle back in 2010. But even like I said, even what Garofalo said about Carroll and what Carroll said in his farewell presser, he would defer to John Schneider a lot. So that means it wasn't solely him making the decision. It wasn't solely him going out and looking for the head coaches. John Schneider also had a say in it, or at least had input. So, and John Schneider would just let Pete do his thing because, well, Pete has won us a championship with what he's did before. So he's like, okay, all right, you go do your thing. And then he now realizes that it hasn't been working out. So now he has to come back. He has to come back under the reins. I mean, that's what Bill Belichick did. That's what Bill Belichick did on the Patriots. He gave I don't know, it was back in early 2010s. He gave the power to like draft back to the GM, and they won more championships. So I think this is very important that the general manager, does what a general manager is supposed to do and manage the team. And this is a very good chance for him to show that he is our guy, which he is. John Schneider is our guy. He is the guy that's going to be making the personnel decisions from here on out, 100%. So I can't wait to see what happens. But I do want us to get Ben Johnson in the end, because you know what? I'm going to pull up Lions. Oh, come on. Lions. Actually, I'm going to do offense rankings. Okay. Now I'm going to go to covers. Where's covers? There you are. There you are. Oh, excuse me. So this season, Detroit had a top 5 scoring offense, or that was last year. Sorry, this year he had a also a top 5 scoring offense. So back-to-back years, he had a top 5 scoring offense in the league as offensive coordinator of the Lions. And I mean, it just goes to show. And you know what? I'm just gonna pull up Ben Johnson. Oh, he's 37. Okay. Still, he's really, really young. But look at the amount. Look at how much experience he has. I mean, 2009. That's 14 years ago. He was 23 years old, barely older than me, when he first was a graduate assistant at Boston College, and then eventually developed himself into an offensive mind. So he has more experience than Bobby Slowick. If you look at Bobby Slowick, and he didn't even start off as an offensive mind. He started off as a defensive mind. He was a defensive assistant for the Redskins, and then he was a defensive quality control coach for the Niners just not long ago in 2017 and 2018. He only switched over to the offensive side of things in 2019. So he's relatively inexperienced, and this is his first ever year being an offensive coordinator. So he wouldn't be as experienced as Ben Johnson in terms of offense, which is why I prefer Ben Johnson over Bobby Slowick. I also wouldn't mind Frank Smith. I'll pull up Frank Smith. Here's Frank Smith. I wouldn't mind him because he also has lots of experience. He's been doing stuff on the offensive side since 2006. So. And he's been an offensive coordinator for a couple years. So he has experience as well. I wouldn't mind him. But since he's a little bit older, I guess he would be a first-time head coach, but he's a little bit older, so he would prefer, and he has more experience than Ben Johnson. So he would probably want to have some say or input on who his coaching staff will be. But then again, maybe not, because he would be a first-year head coach. But unlike Ben Johnson, he has lots of experience, but he's very, very young. So, I think that this is the way to go. I think that getting Ben Johnson as our next head coach would be perfect. And it gives him time to develop himself and establish himself as a good coach in this league. I think he can be a good coach, especially with John Schneider as his GM. And John Schneider knows how to draft, as you know. So he would have John Schneider as his GM drafting him the pieces that he would need to make this team successful. And the thing is, although Pete Carroll had a lot of say on who we drafted ever since he became head coach and VP of football operations, John Schneider still had say because he is the GM. And the thing with Pete Carroll is he was not really good at drafting the trenches on the offensive side. I feel like John Schneider is. So I feel like John Schneider knows that's important. So like you can tell that the past couple drafts, John Schneider has had more say in who we draft than Pete Carroll. I mean, with that 9th overall pick in the 2022 draft, we chose an offensive lineman, not a defensive lineman, when we've done that in the past. Because we know how important, because John Schneider knows how important it is to have a left tackle in this league. It's behind the quarterback. A left tackle is the most important position on the offense. So he knew that. But when we drafted back-to-back years, a running back in back-to-back years, that was definitely Pete Carroll. John Schneider wouldn't have done that. And then drafting a cornerback with the top overall pick, that was Pete Carroll for sure, because he's a DB's guy. He's a DB's coach, so he likes his DBs. So, and John Schneider was all for it, and it was a right call because Devin Witherspoon's a baller. So definitely a good call by Pete, but it wasn't enough for us. And John Schneider, he, and this is going to lead me into a slightly, what I'm about to say is going to lead me into a slightly off topic because I haven't talked about it in a minute, but he said that last year we underperformed, and we did. I like that he admitted that. John Schneider admitted that we underperformed, underachieved, and we had high hopes entering the season. And this leads me to this post I'm moving on to a completely different sport, but you know what I'm talking about, the Mariners. I'm gonna say this small segment because I didn't want to leave this out, but Mariner News said this: John Schneider after Seahawks sneak into playoffs in 22 and barely miss in 23. We're disappointed. We can't get stagnant, and we need to get better. Jerry Dipoto after Mariners sneak into playoffs in 22 and barely miss in 23. We got better. Be patient. We're doing you a favor. See, this is the reason why John Schneider is a Super Bowl winning coach, or Super Bowl winning GM, and Jerry Dipoto will never ever win a World Series. Will never win a championship as our president of baseball operations. It's because of stuff like this. John Schneider knows what it takes to win a championship because he's done it. He's done it. So he knows that we have to get a better coach to coach a coach that can better coach the players that we have. Because like I said, we have ballers on our team. We have Pro Bowlers on our team. So we have Pro Bowl and All Pro caliber players on our team. And it just didn't work out because the coaching did not work out. It didn't work out. So, coaching was not that good the past few years. He knows that. Jerry Dipoto doesn't know that for some reason. Or either that or he's doing this on purpose. But I wanted to talk about that. I will make an entire another video on the Mariners once spring training comes closer, but I wanted to point that out. But going back, overall, yes, Ben Johnson should be the next Seahawks coach. Comment below if you agree with me, because I think that's all I have for this video. And if you like the video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share for more Seahawks and Seattle sports content. Thank you for stopping by. Have a good day. And go Hawks, go Mariners, and go Kraken.